She stood in the center of the ash-filled sky, her silver hair whipping in the wind, eyes blazing with pride. The crowd of soldiers, unsullied and Dothraki, watched in silence. High above, the dragons circled. Drogon roared, Rhaegal screeched, and Viserion let out a low growl. They had just burned down the last line of Lannister defense near the gates of King's Landing. Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons, had won another battle. She thought the sky answered only to her voice, that the dragons were hers alone, bound to her blood, her fire, her destiny. But things had changed. Quietly, without warning, Jon Snow stood beside her, half-torn by what he had witnessed. The screams of women, the cries of children, the sight of men burned alive by dragonfire. It stayed in his eyes, heavy as stone. He looked at her not like a lover, but like a man seeing a stranger wearing someone else's skin. He didn't say a word, but the dragons heard his silence. Later that night, when the fires were still burning across the city, Jon walked out into the ruins alone. The stars above were hidden by smoke, and only the soft sound of wings filled the air. One by one they came, Drogon the largest, the fiercest, Rhaegal, wounded from earlier battles, still strong, and Viserion, cold-eyed and fast as death. They landed before him. Jon stepped back, unsure. But instead of attacking, the dragons lowered their heads, all three of them. Like they were bowing. He didn't understand at first. He looked around. "Go back to her," he said quietly. "She's your queen." But they didn't move. Behind him, footsteps came running. It was Tyrion, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. Did you command them?" "No," Jon said. "I didn't do anything," but Tyrion saw it for what it was. The blood of old Valyria, the Targaryen fire in Jon's veins. It had called to the dragons, and they had chosen him, not Daenerys. Not anymore. When Daenerys found out the next morning, her face went cold. At first she laughed, like it was a foolish rumor. Then she demanded to see for herself. They took her to the field outside the broken city wall. Jon stood there again, silent, calm. The dragon sat near him, close, protective. "Drogon," she called out. "Come to me," the dragon turned to her. But it didn't move. "Rhaegal, Viserion, I raised you. You are mine. Come to me." Still no movement. Jon stepped forward, quietly. "They're not choosing me," he said. "They're choosing what's right." Her eyes turned to steel. "You think you're right? After everything I've done for this realm?" "I think we were supposed to be better," Jon said. "You burned innocent people. They were Lannisters, traitors. They stood in the way. They were children," he said, voice breaking, and in that moment she saw it. The betrayal, not just from Jon, but from the dragons. Her dragons, the only family she truly had. The ones who never left her side, until now. She stepped forward, face twisted in rage and disbelief. "You don't understand what it means to rule." "Maybe not," Jon said. "But I know we can't rule like this." Suddenly, Drogon let out a long, loud growl, not angry but warning. It placed its huge body between her and Jon. Her heart shattered. "They were mine," she whispered, and she turned away. But in her eyes there was something dark. A storm, a fury that wasn't going to die down. Not now, not ever. The dragons had made their choice. Now she would make hers. Daenerys didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply walked away. But something in her died that day. The dragons had been more than weapons. They were her children, her pride, her power, for them to turn, not to an enemy, but to him, the man she loved, the man she trusted. That was a wound deeper than any blade. In the Red Keep, she stood alone by the broken throne room, staring at the melted remains of the Iron Throne. The very thing she had dreamed of since childhood was now gone. Not because her enemies had destroyed it, but because her own dragon had done it. Drogon had melted the throne the moment Daenerys fell in the original timeline. But here, in this twisted path of fate, it melted under Jon's silent command. She clenched her fists. Her voice, low and sharp, echoed through the ruined hall. "They think they've taken my fire." Her words weren't for anyone. But someone heard them. Grey Worm. He stood at the entrance, his face still bruised from the last fight, but his eyes never looked away from her. "They have," he said. "But we take it back." Daenerys turned, surprised. "He was still loyal. You saw it," she said. "Even Drogon chose him." "As if I meant nothing," Grey Worm stepped forward. "Dragons follow fire, but men, they follow fear." Her lips tightened. "So that's what I am now? A queen of fear, if it keeps the throne in your hands?" Yes, it was the first time someone had said it aloud, that maybe her dream of being a beloved ruler had burned with King's Landing, that maybe love was no longer hers to have. She didn't cry, she planned. That night, Jon stayed in the soldiers' camp, far from the Red Keep. The dragons rested nearby, curled around themselves like massive cats. Rhaegal snored. Viserion kept one eye open, and Drogon just watched the sky, restless. Jon sat by the fire, sharpening Longclaw. Tyrion sat beside him, drinking slowly. "She won't forgive this," Tyrion said, his voice flat. "You know that, don't you?" Jon didn't answer right away. Then he said, "It's not about forgiveness anymore. She's not the woman I thought she was." Tyrion laughed bitterly. "None of us are, Jon, not after this war." Jon looked at him. "Do you think I wanted this? I didn't ask for dragons to bow. I didn't ask for blood?" "No," Tyrion said. "But blood follows you anyway." Far away, in the darkness of the city, a shadow moved. Quick, silent, dangerous. Daenerys had sent a group of elite Unsullied with one goal, not to kill Jon, but to take him, alive. She didn't want his blood spilled. She wanted something worse. She wanted to break him. In her eyes, Jon had not just stolen her dragons. He had insulted her name, her birthright, her soul. And for that, death was too kind. Just past midnight, the dragons stirred. Drogon let out a low growl. Jon stood up, instantly alert. But it was too late. Smoke bombs rolled into the camp. Within seconds, chaos erupted. He tried to fight. Longclaw swung left, then right, taking 2 Unsullied down. But there were too many, and this time the dragons didn't attack. They hesitated, confused. Jon shouted, "Drogon, help me!" But Drogon didn't move. He looked back and saw something horrifying. A signal torch burning high on the hill, a sound only the dragons could hear. A sound they had been trained to obey from the day they were born, a signal from Daenerys. Drogon stepped back, not forward, and Jon fell. When he woke, he was chained underground, somewhere deep in the ruins. He wasn't killed. He wasn't beaten. He was caged, and standing before him was Daenerys. No longer his queen, no longer his lover, just a woman, with a fire in her eyes and ashes in her heart. "You stole what was mine," she said. Jon struggled, blood on his face. "They chose me. I raised them," she said, "fed them, protected them. And they still turned." She knelt in front of him. "So now, Jon Snow, I'll teach you what happens when fire turns against its mother." The cell was damp, cold, and lit only by a single torch flickering behind iron bars. Jon could barely move. His wrists were bruised from the chains, his lips split from a fight he barely remembered. But he was alive, and he knew why. She didn't want to kill him. Not yet. Daenerys sat across from him, dressed not in her usual royal black and red, but in deep grey, the color of ash. Her silver hair was tied back, sharp braids running across her scalp like battle lines. Her eyes had no warmth, no grief, only control. She looked at him like he was a lesson, a punishment. "Do you remember what you said when we first met in Dragonstone?" she asked softly. Jon didn't answer. "You said you didn't want the crown, that you wanted to protect your people. That power meant nothing to you." Still, he said nothing. She smiled, but it was bitter. "And yet here you are. The dragons, my dragons, bow to you. The people speak your name. They cheer for you. Not me. You burned them," Jon whispered, voice hoarse. "What did you expect?" "They obeyed me before," she snapped. "Even when I burned cities. Even when I crucified masters. Even when I walked through fire and blood. They chose me because I never lied to them. I never pretended to be better than I was." Jon shook his head slowly. "You lost them the day you stopped seeing people as people, and you lost your right to judge me the day you took them from me," she hissed. Then she stood. Her voice dropped to a calm, dangerous softness. "But I'm not going to kill you, Jon. I'm going to show you something." She clapped twice. The door opened. Grey Worm entered, silent, carrying a black cloak and a strange curved horn made of bone. Jon frowned. The horn was old, ancient, and it hummed. "What is that?" Daenerys stepped closer. "You think dragons follow blood. But they don't, Jon. They follow power, magic, fire, control." She nodded to Grey Worm, who handed her the horn. "This," she said, holding it up, "was buried in old Valyria. They say it controls dragons with pain." Jon's eyes widened. "You wouldn't." "I will," she said. "If they won't love me, they will fear me." She turned toward the steps. "Bring Drogon." Jon struggled against his chains. "Daenerys, no!" She looked back at him with cold fire in her voice. "You took their love. Now I'll take their will." Within minutes, the great thundering of wings echoed above. Drogon landed in the courtyard with a thunderous crash, roaring loud enough to shake the walls. He looked around, confused, eyes darting, searching for Jon. Then he saw Daenerys. She stepped forward, holding the horn, and blew. The sound was low, deep, unnatural, like the cry of 1,000 dying beasts at once. Drogon screeched in pain, thrashing his head. His wings flared wide. He let out a pained roar that cracked the stones beneath his feet. Jon screamed, "Stop!" But she didn't. She blew again. This time, Rhaegal and Viserion flew in from the skies, both snarling in agony, circling wildly. Their cries were like thunderclouds weeping, but slowly. They landed, all three eyes wide, breathing hard, their heads lowered, not like before, not with love, but with fear, obedience, control. Daenerys turned back to Jon. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her lips curled in a twisted smile. "You see now?" she whispered. "They were never yours. They were mine. And they always will be." Jon stared, horrified. "At what cost, Dany? You're torturing them." She came close, just inches from his face. "You took their hearts from me. I'll take their freedom from you." Then she walked away, leaving him in the dark again. The dragons didn't move. They just stood there, their eyes empty, broken. That night, deep in the dungeons, Jon sat alone, and from the shadows a voice came. "You're not the only one who saw what she did." He turned. It was Arya, dirty, quiet, deadly. "I saw her blow that horn," she whispered. "I saw the dragons scream." Jon's heart pounded. "Why are you here?" She knelt beside him, unlocking his chains with a stolen key. "Because it's not over yet," she said. Then she looked toward the ceiling. "We're going to take them back, Jon. The dragons, the realm, everything. But how?" he asked, and Arya smiled. "We steal the horn." The corridors beneath the Red Keep were a maze of old stone and silence, filled with shadows that had never seen sunlight. As Jon limped behind Arya, his legs still weak from days in chains, he could feel the heat above them, the breath of the dragons. Restless and trapped by sound and suffering, his heart ached for them. "They don't deserve this," he muttered. Arya didn't look back. "None of us do." She moved like smoke, silent and sure, her dagger gripped tight in her hand. Jon knew that look in her eyes, not just focus, but purpose. Rage dressed in calm, Arya didn't speak unless it mattered. And tonight, it mattered. They came to a small iron door at the back of the hall, guarded by two Unsullied. Before Jon could speak, Arya had already vanished into the dark. A whisper of footsteps. A flash of silver. Both guards dropped before they even saw her coming. Jon stared at the bodies. "You've changed." She wiped the blade on her sleeve. "So have you." Inside the chamber, the horn lay on a stone pedestal, guarded by enchantments Daenerys had ordered a red priestess to place. The same priestess who once whispered to her that fire was destiny and that blood must answer for betrayal. Arya hesitated. "Can you touch it?" Jon stared at the horn. It still hummed even now, almost like it breathed. He stepped forward. His Targaryen blood boiled in his veins as his hand hovered near it. Then he grabbed it, and nothing happened. No fire, no curse, just a sick, bone-deep heaviness in the room. He turned to Arya. "We end it tonight. But as they left the chamber with the horn wrapped tightly in furs, alarms rang out in the keep, unsullied Dothraki servants all running, shouting. The dragons were screeching in pain again. Daenerys was blowing the horn, but it was no longer in her hands. They burst into the upper courtyard. And the sight made Jon's blood run cold. Drogon was roaring, writhing on the ground. Chains had been placed on his neck and legs, glowing red-hot. Magic forged from fire priests and old Valyrian rituals. The other two dragons circled above, confused and wild, afraid to land. Daenerys stood on the balcony, horn in hand, or what she thought was the horn, a perfect copy, forged by her mages to protect the real one. She blew it again. Drogon screamed, but this time he wasn't bowing, he was breaking. Jon stepped forward, rage in his eyes. He pulled the real horn from the furs and shouted, "Stop it!" Daenerys froze. Her face paled. He raised the real horn. "They are not your slaves." But she wasn't ready to lose. With a scream, she threw her fake horn aside and called out, "Drogon! Burn him!" The great beast roared, but this time Drogon didn't obey. His golden eyes locked onto Jon. He saw the horn, felt the truth in it. Then slowly, the dragon turned toward Daenerys. She took a step back. No, Drogon. It's me, I raised you." Drogon didn't attack her. He just stared. Then Rhaegal landed beside him, snarling. Viserion followed, and together, for the first time since they were born, the three dragons let out a roar, not of pain, but freedom. They broke their chains. The sky filled with flame, not aimed at Jon, but around the tower where Daenerys stood. Not to kill her, but to warn her, she stepped back. Trembling, for the first time she felt fear. Jon approached slowly, the horn still in hand. "It's over," he said. She laughed, bitter and broken. "You think this is over? You think dragons picking you makes you king? I don't want the throne. Then why take everything from me?" She screamed. "Because you lost yourself," he said. "The moment you chose fear over love." Behind him, Arya stood still, watching, ready. Daenerys looked around. The keep was crumbling. Her army was scattered. The dragons no longer hers. Even Grey Worm, watching from the shadows, seemed unsure now. She had nothing left but pride, so she turned away and whispered, "Then take it all." With a step forward, she vanished into the flames, but Drogon didn't burn her. He took flight, picked her up gently, and flew into the clouds, disappearing into the night sky. Jon dropped the horn. It cracked, the humming stopped, and the silence was heavier than ever. Smoke still curled from the shattered towers of the Red Keep. Ash floated through the air like snow, silent and choking. The people of King's Landing stepped out from hiding, slowly, cautiously, as if the war might still be waiting behind the next breath. But the skies were clear. No dragons, no fire, no queen. Jon Snow stood in the courtyard with the broken horn at his feet, his chest rising slowly, his face unreadable. Around him, Arya, Tyrion, Davos, and a few Northmen who had survived the chaos gathered in silence. "What now?" Arya asked. Jon didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on the horizon, the place where Drogon had disappeared into the clouds with Daenerys clutched in his claws. No one knew where the dragon had gone. Maybe to Valyria, maybe beyond the sea, or maybe to some forgotten mountaintop where broken queens went to die alone. "She's not coming back," Jon said finally. Tyrion let out a breath. "And what if she does?" Jon looked at him. "Then we pray the dragons remember mercy better than their mother." But not everyone in Westeros was ready to let go of Daenerys Stormborn. Within days, the whispers began. "She's not dead. The breaker of chains will return. She will raise an army across the narrow sea. She will come with fire and fury and take back what's hers." Jon knew that kind of faith. It was blind, dangerous, a sickness, and worse. There were still some in the city who wanted her back. Grey Worm was the first problem. He had refused to kneel, refused to speak with Jon. He had taken his unsullied and locked down the ports of King's Landing, declaring the city under justice until the true queen returns. Jon tried to talk to him. "She's gone," Jon told him. standing just outside the gates of the Blackwater port. "Let the people breathe." Grey Worm didn't look at him. "You betrayed her. I saved them. You took her dragons. I gave them freedom." Grey Worm stepped closer, voice cold as steel. "You broke her." Jon said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Grey Worm's eyes hardened. "Then I'll break you." That night an attempt was made on Jon's life, a poisoned cup. He didn't drink it. Arya did. By accident. She survived. Barely. Jon sat by her side as she lay in a cold sweat, fighting death like it was just another face to stab. Her skin burned. Her breaths were shallow. Her voice was almost gone, but she grabbed Jon's arm and whispered through cracked lips, "This city will never heal. If you don't lead," he gripped her hand. "I'm not meant to rule." "Then find someone who is," she rasped. "Before someone worse does." And she fell unconscious again. The next morning Jon called a council. The lords and ladies of the remaining great houses came. Sansa from the north, Gendry, now Lord of Storm's End, Samwell Tarly, Brienne, even Yara Greyjoy returned from the Iron Islands with cold eyes and sharp words. They met in the Dragon Pit, where kings and queens once claimed power on broken stones and dragon bones. Tyrion stood by Jon's side, whispering, "You know they'll ask you to take the crown." Jon shook his head. "Then I'll say no. And if they don't listen." Jon looked around at the faces, tired, blood-stained, hardened by years of war. "I'll remind them what happens when rulers are chosen for power, and not for peace." The meeting began. Accusations flew. Some still loyal to Daenerys shouted betrayal. Others feared her return more than death. Names were suggested. Arguments roared, but Jon stayed quiet. Until the very end. Then he stood. "I won't be king," he said. The pit went silent. "I won't wear a crown for killing the one who wore it before me. I won't sit on a throne built on the backs of burned children. And I won't rule dragons." "Not anymore." Sansa narrowed her eyes. "Then what do you want?" He looked at her. "Peace, not power." Gendry leaned forward. "You think peace rules itself?" Jon sighed. "No, but I know what war does when it lasts too long." Then he pulled out the broken horn, showed it to everyone. This was power. It controlled fire. It made dragons scream. "And I shattered it." He tossed it to the ground. Let that be the end of it. But not everyone agreed. Outside the city, a shadow was growing. A woman in black sails. A fleet crossing the sea. A new red priestess preaching in the streets of Volantis. And in the skies, something moved. One dragon remained missing, and so did Daenerys. Across the narrow sea, the city of Volantis burned with red light, not from fire, but from flame-colored banners, prayers, and a new prophecy whispered in every corner of the streets. The Dragon Queen is not dead. They chanted it like gospel. She has been reborn through fire again, as she once was, as she always will be. In the great temple of R'hllor, thousands gathered, kneeling before a priestess cloaked in shadow-red robes. Her voice echoed like thunder wrapped in honey, and her eyes shimmered with something far older than faith, knowing. She was betrayed by love, abandoned by fire, broken by blood. But she will rise again, and this time the world will burn properly. Behind her, high above the altar, stood Drogon, his wings scarred, his eyes furious. His roar made even the faithful tremble, and resting beneath him, half hidden in golden silks and fire-kissed veils, Daenerys Targaryen opened her eyes. She wasn't the same. Whatever Drogon had done, wherever he had taken her, something had changed. Her skin still held the same pale light, but her stare was colder now. Not the warmth of a breaker of chains, but the emptiness of a forgotten god. She didn't rise. She didn't speak. She simply watched the flames dance. She was waiting. And her people, broken and fanatical, were preparing for war. Back in King's Landing, Jon stood on the balcony of what used to be Cersei's throne room. The walls were still blackened from fire, the roof half collapsed. But the Iron Throne was gone, melted. No one dared rebuild it. Sansa had returned to Winterfell. The North was now independent. Yara ruled the Iron Islands in silence, her loyalty bought with ships and promises of non-interference. Tyrion handled the city's rebuilding. Though he rarely smiled anymore, Arya remained bedridden, her fever breaking only after days of Jon's sleepless care. But there was peace. For a time, until the reports came, the first village burned in Essos, nothing left but glass and bones. The second was worse. Survivors spoke of a red priestess who walked through fire barefoot, her eyes glowing, spreading the message of the Queen reforged. She rides again, one man said. But this time, she doesn't forgive. Jon clenched his fists when he heard it. How many dragons? The man lowered his eyes. Only one. Tyrion said what Jon was afraid to, but that's all she ever needed. That night, Jon sat with Arya as she finally opened her eyes. "You look like hell," she whispered. Jon smiled faintly. "You're alive. Barely," she coughed. "Guess I'm too stubborn to die." He held her hand. "I need your help," she blinked. "With what?" "Daenerys is alive." Arya's stare sharpened like a blade unsheathed, and she's not the same. Arya sat up slowly, pain flashing in her ribs. "Then you finish what you started." Jon looked away. "I'm not sure I can." "You can," she said. "And if you can't—" "I will," but he already knew the truth. This wasn't just a fight for the throne anymore. It was something deeper, older. The dragons had always been fire-given form. Now they were vengeance. A week later, a raven came from the east. Drogon had crossed the sea. He flew alone, no rider on his back. Just a message burned into the ground outside Dragonstone. "I am coming. And this time, I do not come to rule. I come to end," signed with a symbol, a red star over a three-headed dragon. Jon read it in silence. He turned to Tyrion. "We have to gather everyone," he said. "All the kingdoms. North Vale, Riverlands, Stormlands. Even the Ironborn." Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "To crown a king?" Jon shook his head. "To stop a goddess." But deep in his heart, Jon feared the truth, that maybe Daenerys hadn't just survived. Maybe the fire had claimed her completely, and she wasn't. Coming back to reclaim her throne, she was coming to erase everything that had denied her. Coming to erase everything that had denied her. The wind howled over Dragonstone like a ghost with unfinished business. Jon Snow stood alone on the cliffs, the black waves crashing below. Behind him, Davos and Brienne waited, tense and quiet. Ships were arriving from every corner of Westeros. The banners of Stark, Arryn, Tarly, Greyjoy, even a few Baratheon loyalists from Storm's End. They weren't here for a council. They were here for war, because across the skies, rumors had turned into fear. Drogon had been seen above the narrow sea again, not flying free, patrolling, like a watchman of flame. And always before the dragon came, the same symbol was burned into the earth, a red star over a three-headed dragon. Jon didn't sleep anymore. He barely ate. He spent hours staring out at the sea, waiting, not for Daenerys, but for the thing she had become. "She's not the same," Arya said softly behind him. Jon turned. She had healed enough to walk, though her limp remained. Her eyes, however, were sharper than ever, not filled with pain, but focus. "She's worse," Arya added. "And we both know it," Jon nodded slowly. "She's not coming to win the throne this time. She's coming to destroy it. Then we kill her," Arya said flatly, but Jon looked away. It wasn't that simple. Somewhere in his heart, no matter how far gone she was, he still saw the woman who freed the slaves of Meereen, who held his hand at the walls of Winterfell, who whispered her dreams of peace while they lay beneath furs and snow. But dreams burn fast when fire returns. Tyrion joined them on the cliff moments later. He held a scroll, sealed in wax with no name, only the red sigil. "She's sent her demands," he said. Jon didn't open it. "I already know what it says. She wants you to kneel." "No," Jon said. "She wants me to watch." Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "Watch what?" But they all knew. The dragons hadn't attacked any soldiers. Not yet. Only towns, cities, shrines, thrones, power. Daenerys wasn't waging war against men anymore. She was waging war against everything that ruled them. And now she was coming for Westeros. Not as a queen, but as a cleansing flame. That night, the sky turned red. People screamed in the distance as a great shadow crossed the moon. From Dragonstone's tower, Jon saw it. Drogon, larger than before, his scales now marked with glowing runes, his chest scarred in shapes that looked like stars and flames. He didn't roar, he just flew in silence. The heat of his wings wilting trees below him. The Red Priestess was with him, riding near his neck, her robes dancing like fire itself. And she wasn't Daenerys, not anymore. She wore no crown. She held no sword, but her eyes glowed gold in the dark, and her voice, echoing across the sky, whispered in a tongue older than Valyria. Behind her, in the clouds, another dragon emerged, smaller, but unmistakable. Jon's breath caught. She created another. Arya's eyes narrowed. No, she woke another. The Red Priestess had used blood magic, sacrifices, fire prayers. She had found an ancient egg, long buried in the ruins of Valyria, and she had hatched it through flame and death. The creature was young but fast, twisted, its wings like blades. And it didn't roar, it screamed. The next morning, the army gathered on Dragonstone's black shores. Jon stood before them, armored not in silver or gold, but in black leather and wolf fur, Longclaw at his hip, the broken horn around his neck, not to control dragons, but to remind him what power could do when held too tightly. He looked at the men and women who had survived the war for the throne. Veterans, survivors, scarred, but loyal. This isn't a war for the crown, Jon told them. This isn't about houses or banners. This is about life, about stopping something that once believed in hope, and now believes only in fire. Tyrion added, she doesn't want to rule Westeros. She wants to erase it, start over, build a world where only her word matters. Jon raised Longclaw. We stop her here, or there won't be anything left to save. That night, the dragons came, not to speak, not to warn, but to begin. The skies above Dragonstone lit up with fire, and Daenerys, or what was left of her, landed on the shore barefoot, the flames swirling around her but never burning her. Skin, she looked at Jon, and said only 3 words, I am justice. The beach shook beneath their feet. Drogon landed with a force that cracked the earth, waves crashing backward from the pressure of his wings. His eyes were not the same. Once wild and untamed, now glowing gold like molten sun, trapped in sockets of rage. Beside him, the second dragon, younger but already monstrous, shrieked high into the sky. Behind them, she stepped forward, Daenerys. But not the Daenerys Jon had known. Her silver-white hair floated around her face like a halo of flame, her skin untouched by the storm, her bare feet pressing into the sand without leaving a print. She wore no crown, no sigils, just a cloak of smoke that seemed alive, twisting behind her with every movement. The Red Priestess walked at her side, silent, smiling. The army of Westeros stood frozen, not in fear of her dragons, but in fear of her. The woman who had survived death, who had walked through fire and come out not cleansed but hollowed. Jon stepped forward, Longclaw in hand, the sea wind pulling at his cloak. His voice was calm but heavy. You don't have to do this. Daenerys tilted her head, as if confused by the word don't. She looked at him, through him, like she was seeing something smaller than memory. I already did, she said. And now I will finish it. You were supposed to bring peace, Jon said, stepping closer. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that didn't belong to someone who believed in peace anymore. Peace is a lie told by the powerful to delay the fire they deserve. The Red Priestess stepped forward now, her voice soft but thick with poison. You burned her love. Now she will burn your mercy. Daenerys raised her hand, and Drogon spread his wings. Arya stepped beside Jon, her dagger ready. You kill her or I will. Jon shook his head. Not yet. Then everything exploded. Drogon let loose a roar that turned the sea to steam. But Jon raised the broken horn, now reforged with dragon glass and old steel, and blew it once. It didn't hum. It screamed. Drogon recoiled. Shaking his head, roaring in agony, the second dragon shrieked. Spinning in the air, crashing into the cliffs behind the beach, Daenerys stumbled, her cloak of smoke pulling tight like it was trying to strangle her. The horn broke again, cracked straight down the middle, but it bought them seconds. Jon charged. Their armies clashed behind them. Steel against fire, men screaming, dragons diving. Brienne led the front line, shield raised, deflecting dragon flame with armor soaked in wildfire-proof oil. Gendry's hammer shattered unsullied helmets. Yara's fleet fired harpoons from the sea cliffs, but it wasn't enough. Drogon rose again, snapping through men like ants. Daenerys walked through the battle like a ghost, untouched by blade or flame. Arrows melted before touching her. She whispered in High Valyrian, and the air itself bent around her. Jon reached her. He lifted Longclaw, shouting, "You were my queen!" She didn't flinch. "You were my mercy." Still, she didn't move. "You were the only thing that made me believe this world could be more than war," Daenerys whispered. "And you were the reason I burned it." Then she struck, faster than thought, her hand catching his wrist, burning it through the leather. He dropped the sword, but Arya was there, from behind, silent as death. She lunged, Valyrian steel in hand. Daenerys turned just in time, catching the blade in her palm, but her hand bled. Real blood, Arya gasped. Jon's eyes widened. "She can bleed," he whispered. Daenerys looked down at her hand. Surprised, not by the pain, but by the fact that she felt it, she backed away, staring at the red pooling in her palm. The Red Priestess screamed in panic, but it was too late. Something inside Daenerys cracked. "I am fire," she whispered, but the fire no longer obeyed her. It feared her. Drogon roared again, not at Jon, but at her. For the first time, the dragon turned its head. Away, Jon picked up Longclaw. Daenerys looked at him, and in that moment, just one, her eyes softened, a flicker of who she once was. A girl in chains, a queen in snow, a woman who once dreamed of peace. "I didn't want this," she said. Softly, neither did he, but he stepped forward and drove the sword into her heart. The sky shattered with the sound of Drogon's cry. But he didn't burn Jon. He didn't fly. He simply landed beside her. Body lowered his head and let out a quiet, broken moan. The Red Priestess vanished in the chaos. No one ever saw her again. The second dragon let out a weak breath and collapsed into the sea. Arya fell to her knees, exhausted, bloody, but alive. And Jon. He stood, holding Daenerys in his arms, snow falling all around them. Not ash this time, just snow. Real, cold, pure. When he looked at the broken army, the fires dying, the dragons gone, he whispered, "No more thrones, no more gods, no more fire," and walked away. More gods, no more fire, and walked away.